There are dishes that appear simply to fill people's stomachs. There are dishes that go further, becoming a source of pride, becoming cultural symbols, becoming something that, the moment their name is mentioned, an entire country immediately sees itself reflected within them. And then there are dishes even more special than that. They are not just food, they are identity. They are not just flavor, they are honor. For Italy, pizza sits exactly in that place. That is why, among the countless culinary controversies in the world, there is perhaps no rivalry as long-lasting, emotional, and dramatic as the war between Italians and pineapple pizza. One side sees it as playful creativity, a variation suited to certain tastes, a dish that is hardly worth making a fuss over. The other side sees it as a public insult to tradition, a scratch placed right in the middle of the pride of a cuisine admired by the entire world. And what is interesting is that this battle has never truly ended. If viewed only from the outside, many people would think this is a slightly ridiculous argument. It is just a pizza, after all. If someone likes pineapple, let them eat it. If not, choose another topping. Why react so strongly? But if we understand how Italians view food, we begin to see that pizza has never been a small matter. In Italy, food is not simply something placed on the table and gone a few minutes later. It is history, family memory, a way of life, an invisible order passed down from one generation to the next. A dish prepared correctly is not merely delicious. It is correct in method, correct in ingredients, correct in spirit, correct in context, correct to the place where it was born. And when a dish has reached the status of an icon like pizza, people no longer see it as a flexible formula. It becomes something almost sacred. Italian pizza was not born in luxurious restaurants. It came from working-class streets, from humble ovens in Naples, from the need for something quick, cheap, filling, and easy to carry. Yet, from those simple origins, pizza developed into a masterpiece of restraint. A thin crust, precisely fermented dough, tomato sauce with natural sweet acidity, mozzarella rich enough to provide depth without overwhelming the base, basil adding a very light fragrance, yet enough to give the entire pie its own soul. At first glance, it seems simple, but that simplicity is precisely what makes it so difficult. Because when a dish contains only a few elements, each one must have a real reason to exist. Nothing is allowed to be excessive. Nothing is allowed to show off. That is the philosophy Italians cherish. A good dish does not need too many things, only that everything be in its proper place. And then pizza left Italy and entered the world, stepping into the era of culinary globalization, where every dish begins to take on a new fate. When it arrived in America, pizza was no longer the street food of Naples. It became bigger, thicker, cheesier, more heavily topped, more intense in flavor. From there, pizza entered yet another phase. It became the perfect canvas for the imagination of the mass market. Sausage, bacon, beef, grilled chicken, bell peppers, mushrooms, olives, then countless sauces, stuffed crusts, and hybrid formulas. Pizza was no longer a purely traditional dish. It became an open format. As long as it sat on a baked flat dough with sauce and cheese, almost anything could be forgiven. In that world, pineapple pizza was bound to appear sooner or later. The first irony is that pineapple pizza, the dish that has made Italians wince countless times, was not born in Italy at all. It is associated with the name Hawaiian pizza, yet it does not truly come from Hawaii either. The most common story points to Canada, where a Greek immigrant in the 1960s is said to have tried putting canned pineapple on pizza to create a new combination of salty and sweet. The name Hawaiian came from the brand of canned pineapple, not from the true homeland of the dish. That detail alone is enough to make many people laugh. One of the world's biggest cultural food controversies actually carries a thoroughly misleading name. But regardless of where it was born, what matters is that from the moment pineapple appeared on pizza, an invisible line was drawn. On one side, many people argue that pineapple on pizza makes perfect sense. Pineapple is sweet, lightly acidic, and juicy. When paired with salty cured meat like ham, it creates an interesting contrast. The sensation of biting into something rich and savory, only to be met with a burst of fruit sweetness, can create a very clear pleasure for many people. In the logic of modern fusion cuisine, this is not particularly shocking. Today's world is already accustomed to fruit salads with cheese, burgers topped with onion jam, roasted meat served with applesauce, fish paired with passion fruit, and even fine dining dishes that deliberately play with the tension between sweet and savory. So why has pineapple pizza become such a major target of attack? The answer lies in the fact that Italians are not reacting merely to the sweetness of pineapple. They are reacting because pineapple appears on pizza, and pizza is one of the last fortresses of Italian culinary identity in their own eyes. In other words, the issue is not only the ingredient, the issue is the symbol. The more symbolic a dish becomes, the less willing people are to accept controversial changes to it. No one is especially shocked if a sandwich contains fruit. Few people become angry if a salad is adapted in a tropical style. But pizza is different. For many Italians, pizza is not a blank sheet of paper on which the world can write whatever it wants. It is a completed work. And when someone adds pineapple to it, the feeling is not unlike taking colored markers to a famous classical painting and claiming it would be more fun that way. To understand the Italian reaction more deeply, we have to look at how this cuisine built its reputation over centuries. Italian cuisine is admired not because it is elaborate in a flashy way, but because of its ability to turn humble ingredients into something refined through technique, discipline, and respect for seasonality. A good pasta dish does not need too many components, but the proportions must be exact. A good risotto does not need dazzling decoration, but its texture and doneness must be perfect. A good pizza does not need to be buried under toppings, but dough, heat, and timing must move together like a precise piece of music. Italians are proud of that. They are proud because they have shown that refinement lies not in adding more, but in knowing exactly where to stop. And pineapple pizza, in their eyes, represents the opposite. Curiosity pushed beyond limits, improvisation without control, novelty placed above the internal logic of the dish. But to be fair, it must also be admitted that not all Italian discomfort comes entirely from culinary reasoning. Part of it comes from the feeling of losing control over their own heritage. This is something that often happens to cultures with global influence. When one of your dishes becomes famous worldwide, you simultaneously lose the exclusive right to decide how it will be understood. Pizza today is no longer only Italy's in the everyday sense. It has become a global food, adapted into hundreds of versions in the United States, Japan, South Korea, Brazil, India, and nearly everywhere else on the map. When that happens, the sense of having one's identity stolen is very real. And pineapple pizza becomes the clearest symbol of that discomfort because it is so famous, so attention-grabbing, and so distant from the original version. That is the point when the story moves beyond the kitchen and into the territory of psychology and culture. Italians are not merely saying pineapple pizza tastes bad. They are saying there are limits that deserve respect. That creativity does not mean doing whatever one wants. That a traditional dish, before being altered, should at least be understood in its original spirit. This is important because in an era where everything is remixed, altered, cut apart, and rebuilt to suit individual taste, the Italian view may sound conservative, but it is not irrational. If every symbol can be completely bent out of shape while still keeping its original name, then at some point, tradition itself becomes nothing more than a decorative label. If every symbol can be completely bent out of shape while still keeping its original name, then at some point, tradition itself becomes nothing more than a decorative label. The problem is that the modern world operates according to a very different logic. Today's consumers view personalization as a basic right. Order what you like, eat what makes you happy, and if you are paying, the choice belongs to you. Under that way of thinking, the strong reaction against pineapple pizza appears unnecessarily dramatic. Many people even order pineapple pizza deliberately to provoke, as a way of pushing back against what they see as outdated rigidity. The internet has made that conflict explode even more strongly. Images, jokes, polls, and arguments that are half serious and half mocking have turned pineapple pizza from a dish into a global meme. Every time someone posts a photo of a pizza covered in pineapple, the online world practically knows what happens next. Supporters rush in to defend freedom of choice. Opponents immediately condemn it as a culinary crime. And so the dish continues to live on through the very division it creates. What is fascinating is that the more pineapple pizza is opposed, the more famous it becomes. It is no longer just something to eat. It has become a personality test. Liking pineapple pizza can suddenly feel like a declaration that you are open-minded, non-dogmatic, and willing to try something new. Hating pineapple pizza, on the other hand, suggests that you value standards, believe in principles, and have clear aesthetic boundaries in food. A dish that can make people sort themselves into camps like this has clearly gone far beyond its original function. It resembles a social symbol more than a lunch. People argue about it with the kind of feeling usually reserved for football, religion, or politics. And somewhere in that, it says a great deal about modern people. We do not only eat to survive, we also use food to express who we are. However, if we strip away the theatrical layer of social media, a more important question remains. Is pineapple pizza actually wrong from a culinary standpoint? This is where things become more complicated. If judged by the standards of traditional Neapolitan pizza, the answer is almost certainly yes. Pineapple contains a lot of water, its sweetness is prominent, and its acidity and aroma can distort a flavor structure originally built around dough, tomato, cheese, and a certain balance of toppings. It breaks the philosophy of restraint and harmony that classic Italian pizza values. But if we step away from traditional standards and judge purely by personal taste experience, the answer is no longer absolute. In some recipes, when pineapple is used in the right amount, with moisture carefully controlled and paired with suitable ingredients like ham, bacon, or jalapeno, pineapple pizza can become something quite enjoyable, even addictive, for many people. In other words, the issue is not simply whether it tastes good or bad. The issue is which framework we are using to judge it. That is also why this war can never have an absolute winner. The two sides are not really speaking the same language. Italians are defending the legitimacy of tradition. Supporters of pineapple pizza are defending the freedom to enjoy what they like. One side asks whether this dish is true to the spirit of pizza. The other asks whether this dish tastes good to me. It sounds like a debate about food, but in reality, it is a clash between two value systems. One side puts weight on origin, standards, and continuity. The other emphasizes the individual, personal experience, and freedom of choice. When the foundation is different, the argument is bound to continue forever. And perhaps that is exactly why pineapple pizza has become such a compelling subject. It does not only tell a story about pineapple or pizza. It tells a story about how the world treats tradition in the modern age. It raises a difficult but necessary question. When a cultural symbol goes global, who still has the right to define it? The people who created it, the people who preserved it, or the millions who consume it every day? If a dish has crossed the borders of its homeland and become part of international everyday life, does it still belong exclusively in spirit to the place where it was born? Or sooner or later, are all famous cultural legacies destined to be reshaped by the market and popular taste into versions that are easier to sell, easier to access, and sometimes far more distant from the original? Seen more broadly, pineapple pizza is not the only case. The world has seen many dishes transformed to the point that the people who created them barely recognize them anymore. Sushi drowned in mayonnaise and cheese, hard-shell tacos sold on a mass scale, Italian pasta covered in sauces completely unlike the original, or countless fusion dishes created more to please the market than to remain loyal to tradition. But just like pineapple pizza, the answer is rarely simple. The history of human cuisine has never stood still. Many traditional dishes themselves were once the product of exchange, migration, adaptation, and change. In other words, creativity is not the direct opposite of tradition. The real issue lies in understanding and attitude. Are you reinventing a dish because you truly understand the original, or simply because you want to shock people and sell more? So if there is one fair point for both sides in the pineapple pizza conflict, it is this: Italians have every right to feel uncomfortable when one of their symbols is treated too casually. That feeling is not petty, it is deeply human. When part of your identity is turned into a joke by the world, a defensive reaction is understandable. But on the other hand, people who enjoy pineapple pizza are not wrong simply because their taste differs from traditional standards. Food, in the end, remains a living experience tied to personal preference, memory, and emotion. No one can truly force the whole world to taste everything according to one template. The issue only becomes tense when one side completely denies the other's right to exist. And perhaps that is the true reason this story has lasted so long. It contains everything needed to remain timeless. Tradition facing modernity, identity facing globalization, standards facing personal freedom, national pride facing an internet culture built on teasing and provocation. Something both serious and absurd, small in scale, yet symbolic of much larger conflicts. A piece of pineapple sitting on a pizza may look simple, But it touches the most sensitive nerve of Italian food culture. The belief that a dish, like a work of art, has limits that cannot be erased at will. In the end, pineapple pizza may never be accepted by Italy as a legitimate part of its tradition. And perhaps it does not need that acceptance in order to survive. It will still be ordered everywhere, still be mocked, still be loved, still continue to fuel endless arguments at dining tables and across social media. But if we look deeper, the most memorable thing is not whether pineapple belongs on pizza or not. The most memorable thing is that through one single dish, we can see an entire collision between past and present, between loyalty to roots and the desire for creative freedom, between cultural pride and the unstoppable force of globalization. And perhaps that is the real reason Italians cannot forgive pineapple pizza. Not only because they hate its flavor, but because it reminds them of a much harder truth to accept. Once your dish has conquered the world, it is no longer entirely yours. In that moment, the ancient feud between Italian cuisine and pineapple pizza ceases to be just an argument about toppings. It becomes a story about cultural ownership, the limits of creativity, and how far people are willing to go to protect what they love. A pizza can fill a stomach, but sometimes it is also powerful enough to strike at the pride of an entire nation.